The cardboard box hit the driveway at 6:47 a.m. on my 18th birthday. "That's the last of it," my father said from the doorway. "You're an adult now. Time to learn what the real world is like." I stood on the driveway in my pajamas, looking at 3 boxes of my belongings. Clothes. Books. A laptop. Everything I owned in the world. "Dad, I'm still in high school. I graduate in 2 months. You'll figure it out." We did. My mother appeared behind him. Handed me an envelope. "There's $200. That should get you started. Don't come back asking for more." "Where am I supposed to go?" My father crossed his arms. "That's not my problem anymore. You're 18. You're legally an adult. This is what responsibility looks like. But, we're teaching you a lesson your grandfather never taught me. He babied me my whole life. Gave me everything. Made me weak. I'm not making that mistake with you." The door closed. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Then I loaded my boxes into my car, a 1997 Honda Civic I'd bought with money from my part-time job, and drove to the only place I could think of. Grandpa Joe's house. He opened the door in his bathrobe, took one look at me, and said, "They finally did it, didn't they?" I nodded. "Goddamn idiots," he muttered. "Come on. Bring your stuff inside." I lived with Grandpa Joe for the next 7 years. And when he died, I found out he'd left me everything. All $8.3 million of it. My parents got $1 each. Hey Tangled Yarns family, it's Brett. And if you're new here, welcome to the story of how parents who kicked their kid out at 18 to teach responsibility learned that Grandpa had been paying very close attention to who actually needed protecting. Today's story is about Cameron West, who was thrown out of their house on their 18th birthday with 3 boxes and $200 because their father wanted to teach them what he'd never learned. And when Grandpa Joe died 7 years later, Cameron inherited an estate worth $8.3 million while the parents who'd abandoned them got exactly $1 each and a letter explaining why. Let's untangle this. Cameron West was born in 2001. Only child. Middle-class family in Ohio. Their father, David West, was a regional sales manager. Made about $120,000 a year. Their mother, Linda, was a nurse. Made about $75,000. Comfortable life. Nice house. Good schools. But David had a philosophy about parenting. A philosophy that got louder and more rigid as Cameron got older. "My father ruined me," he'd say. "Gave me everything. Paid for college. Bought me my first car. I never had to work for anything. That's why I struggled as an adult. I wasn't prepared." This wasn't entirely true. David's father, Grandpa Joe, had helped him, yes. But David had also made plenty of his own bad decisions. Failed businesses. Bad investments. He blamed his father's generosity instead of his own judgment. And he decided Cameron would be different. Starting around age 14, David implemented rules. Cameron had to pay rent if they wanted to keep living at home after 18. Had to buy their own car. Had to pay for their own college. "I'm not raising someone who expects handouts," David said. Linda went along with it. She'd grown up poor. Thought maybe David was right. That kids needed to be tough. Cameron tried to prepare. Got a job at 16. Saved money. Applied for scholarships. But the real bomb dropped on Cameron's 18th birthday. February 14, 2019. Cameron woke up expecting maybe a card. Maybe breakfast. Instead, David and Linda were packing Cameron's belongings into boxes. "What are you doing?" "You're 18 now," David said. "Legal adult. Time to start your adult life. I'm still in high school. You can finish from wherever you end up. This is for your own good." Cameron tried to argue. Tried to reason. Tried to understand. But David was immovable. This was the plan. This was what responsible parents did. By 7 a.m., Cameron was standing in the driveway with 3 boxes, a car, and $200. Cameron drove to Grandpa Joe's house in a state of shock. Grandpa Joe lived 40 minutes away in a small house he'd bought in the 1970s. He was 76 years old. Retired mechanical engineer. Widowed. Lived alone. He took one look at Cameron and knew exactly what had happened. "Your father's an idiot," he said. "Always has been. Come on in." Cameron moved into the spare bedroom that day. Grandpa Joe didn't ask for rent. Didn't ask for anything. Just said, "You finish school. You figure out your next steps. I'm not kicking you out." Cameron finished high school. Graduated in May 2019. Applied to colleges. Got accepted to Ohio State. But the tuition was $28,000 a year. Cameron had saved $4,000. Had scholarships covering another $12,000. Still short. David refused to help. "You're an adult. Adult problems require adult solutions." Grandpa Joe quietly paid the difference. Didn't tell Cameron until the tuition bill was marked paid. "Grandpa, you can't, I can do whatever I want with my money," he said. "And I want you to go to college without drowning in debt because your father is trying to prove a point." Cameron tried to refuse. Tried to insist on paying him back. "You can pay me back by doing well and not turning into your father," Grandpa Joe said. Cameron lived with Grandpa Joe through college. Commuted to campus. Worked part-time. Studied hard. Graduated in 2023 with a degree in environmental science. Got a job with the state EPA. Started making $52,000 a year. Moved out into a small apartment. Finally independent. But still visited Grandpa Joe every week. Had dinner. Watched basketball. Talked. David and Linda had tried to reconnect a few times over the years. Awkward phone calls. A text on Cameron's birthday. But Cameron kept them at a distance. The wound of being kicked out at 18 hadn't healed. In November 2023, Grandpa Joe had a stroke. Cameron got the call from the hospital. Rushed over. Grandpa Joe was stable but weak. The doctors said he'd need rehab. Probably couldn't live alone anymore. Cameron took a leave from work. Moved back into Grandpa Joe's house. Managed his care. Drove him to appointments. Helped with physical therapy. David called once. "How's Dad doing?" "He had a stroke. He needs care." "Well, keep us updated." That was it. No offer to help. No visit. Just keep us updated. Grandpa Joe recovered somewhat. But he was frailier. Older. In February 2024, he asked Cameron to sit down. "I need to talk to you about something." "Okay." "I updated my will. I want you to know what's in it." Cameron shifted uncomfortably. "Grandpa, you don't have to listen to me. I'm leaving you everything. The house. The investments. The savings. All of it." "What about Dad?" "Your father gets $1. Your mother gets $1. That's it." Cameron stared. "Why?" "Because I've spent the last 5 years watching you put your life back together after they threw you away. And I've spent the same 5 years watching them do nothing. No apology. No acknowledgement. Nothing. I don't want your money, Grandpa. I don't care what you want. I care about what's right. And what's right is making sure you're taken care of. Because nobody else did." Grandpa Joe died in his sleep on March 3, 2024. Peacefully. At home. Cameron was in the next room. The funeral was small. Cameron organized it. David and Linda showed up. Stayed an hour. Left. Didn't offer to help with arrangements. Didn't offer to pay for anything. Just showed up and left. 2 weeks later, the will reading was scheduled. The attorney, a woman named Margaret Cho, had known Grandpa Joe for 30 years. She'd requested Cameron, David, and Linda all attend in person. They met at her office. David and Linda sat on one side. Cameron sat on the other. Margaret opened the file. Joseph West's will is straightforward. I'll read the relevant sections. She cleared her throat. To my son, David West, I leave the sum of $1. This nominal amount is intentional and deliberate, to make clear that this is not an oversight but a decision. You threw your child out at 18 to teach them responsibility. You taught them that family is conditional. You taught them cruelty. I want you to know that I saw that. And I did not approve. The room went dead silent. David's face turned red. Margaret continued. To my daughter-in-law, Linda West, I leave the sum of $1. You stood by and allowed your child to be abandoned. You are equally responsible. Linda's mouth opened. Nothing came out. To my grandchild, Cameron West, I leave the entirety of my estate. This includes my home at 428 Maple Street, my investment portfolio, my savings accounts, my personal property, and all other assets. The current estimated value is $8.3 million. Cameron's head snapped up. What? Margaret looked over her glasses. Your grandfather was a very prudent investor. He lived modestly. Saved aggressively. He wanted you to have security. The security he felt you were denied. David stood up. This is bullshit. He's my father. I'm his son. And Cameron is your child, Margaret said calmly. Whom you kicked out at 18. Joseph was very clear about his reasoning. We were teaching responsibility. You were teaching abandonment. Joseph saw the difference. Linda was crying now. We didn't know he had that much money. That's obvious, Margaret said. Because if you'd known, you probably would have treated him better. David pointed at Cameron. You manipulated him. Turned him against us. Cameron finally spoke. I didn't turn him against you. You did that yourself when you put my stuff in boxes on my 18th birthday. We were trying to help you. You threw me out. Grandpa took me in. That's the difference. David's attorney, he'd brought one, asked to see the will. Reviewed it. Confirmed it was legally sound. You can contest it, the attorney said quietly to David. But it's very clearly written. And there's a no contest clause. If you challenge and lose, you forfeit the $1. David looked like he wanted to flip the table. Instead, he walked out. Linda followed, sobbing. Cameron sat alone with Margaret. Did you know? Cameron asked. That he had this much? Yes. He'd been working with our firm for decades. Why didn't he tell me? Because he didn't want you to stay because of money. He wanted you to stay because you wanted to. And you did. Cameron inherited everything. The house. Worth about $240,000. The investment portfolio. Worth $7.8 million. Savings and other assets. Another $260,000. Total, $8.3 million. Cameron paid the estate taxes. Paid Margaret's fees. And then sat in Grandpa Joe's house, now Cameron's house, trying to process it. David tried calling 2 days later. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Cameron, be reasonable. That's family money. It should be split. It was Grandpa's money. He decided where it should go. We're your parents. You stopped being my parents when you kicked me out at 18. You taught me that family is conditional. Congratulations. I learned. Cameron hung up. Linda sent an email. Long apologetic. Explaining that they'd been wrong. That they were sorry. That they hoped Cameron would share the inheritance because it's what family does. Cameron didn't respond. David threatened legal action. His attorney sent a letter claiming undue influence. Cameron's attorney, Margaret, responded with a detailed timeline. Grandpa Joe's will had been updated in 2019, shortly after Cameron moved in. He'd been mentally competent. Had updated it multiple times over 5 years. Had explained his reasoning clearly. There was no case. David dropped it. By summer 2024, Cameron had made decisions. Kept the house. Renovated it. Made it home. Invested most of the money conservatively. Lived off a modest salary from the EPA plus investment income. Donated $500,000 to a scholarship fund for foster kids and homeless youth. In Grandpa Joe's name. Started a foundation providing emergency housing assistance for young adults kicked out by their families. Used the money to help people who'd been in the exact situation Cameron had been in. And refused every attempt from David and Linda to reconcile. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. They'd made their choice in 2019. Cameron had learned the lesson they'd tried to teach. Actions have consequences. In December 2024, Linda tried one more time. Showed up at the house unannounced. Cameron answered the door. I just want to talk. There's nothing to say. Cameron, please. We made a mistake. We were wrong. Can't you forgive us? You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to throw me out. You chose not to help me. You chose not to check on me. You made those choices for 5 years. We thought we were doing the right thing. And Grandpa thought he was doing the right thing when he left you $1. So I guess we all learned about consequences. Linda left crying. Cameron closed the door and never heard from them again. Let's talk about what actually happened here. This story isn't about money. It's about what happens when you confuse cruelty with teaching. David believed he was preparing Cameron for the real world. Teaching responsibility. Building character. What he actually did was abandon his child at the most vulnerable transition of their life. 18 is legally an adult. But it's not emotionally or developmentally adult. It's a kid who still needs support. Guidance. Safety. David took that away to prove a point. To correct what he saw as his father's mistake. But Grandpa Joe hadn't made a mistake. He'd helped his son. And when that son turned around and hurt his grandchild, Grandpa Joe made a decision. He'd protect the one who actually needed it. The $8.3 million wasn't a reward. It was security. The security David had refused to provide. And the $1? That wasn't punishment. It was a message. I saw what you did. And I didn't approve. Sometimes the most important inheritance isn't money. It's the lesson about who shows up and who doesn't. Alright, Tangled Yarns family, your turn. Have you ever been kicked out or cut off by family who claimed they were teaching you a lesson? Or have you seen a grandparent or relative step in to protect someone when their parents failed them? Drop your stories below. Because the people who save us deserve to be remembered. If this one hit home, hit that like button. Subscribe for new stories every single day. And remember, teaching responsibility means giving someone tools to succeed. Not throwing them out and hoping they survive. I'm Brett. This is Tangled Yarns. And that yarn? Officially untangled. See you tomorrow.